Hi, I'm Camden.
And I'm Bree from St. Louis.
And you're listening to Scandal Water. Go Power Rangers!
Welcome to Scandal Water, where the tea is hot and the conversation lively.
Your hosts, Candy
and Ashley,
will discuss a peculiar story somehow related to the entertainment industry. This podcast might not change the world, but it just might satisfy your thirst for an intriguing tale.
Oh, it's that time of day. Tune in and hear what the ladies say. It's time to bend your ear when the silver screen appears. Stories about the stage and screen and everything in between. So come on and join the fun. The curtain opens in 3, 2, 1. Stories in Scandal Water, it's where you need to be. Stories in Scandal Water, let's pour you a cup of tea.
Good morning, Ashley.
good morning.
We are heading into our final episode of our June theme children's shows, and I am very pumped about this
You
one.
are pumped about this one.
It has a lot of personal connections for me.
Yeah.
In fact, you guys, I'm not sure if you picked up on this, but the shout out that started this episode, that was actually my son Camden and his girlfriend Bree, and I specifically asked them to do this for us because you all, my kids loved the Power Rangers.
Yes.
Our topic for today, when they were little, Camden more so than Kennedy, but Kennedy was a pink Power Ranger
was
at some
she?
point. Yes, I could not find a picture of that, and believe me, I looked. But I did bring with me for your
What have you
viewing
got?
enjoyment, Ashley.
Look at this precious. Oh, look at him.
Yes, what I brought
He's so
was you have one picture of Camden wearing his personalized airbrushed
Yes, it
Power
does.
Ranger
Blue.
t-shirt while playing with some Power Ranger merch, and then another picture of him in his little, like, what is that, a onesie?
Yes.
Playing with some different merch. This boy loved the Power Rangers.
I feel like I've seen this look on your face many a time.
Very
like,
serious.
Yes, disbelief.
But the thing is, my kiddos are in their 20s, so they were watching the Power Rangers in the 2000s. Some of what they were watching was airing live.
Uh-huh.
Some of it was being passed down on VHS tape from this
Right.
one cousin that they had who was a big fan, but he was older, so he was done with it. So he passed some things down. But we all remember. My family remembers the Power Rangers. In fact, Kirk and I still joke to this day. We got caught up. He and I got caught up in one season. It was the Power Rangers Time Force season, which I'm telling you, for what the genre for what it was good.
All right.
Yes. In fact, I went back and watched like the first 5 or 6 episodes to prepare for this. Just go with me, guys. Just bear with me here.
Purely for
But,
research.
yeah,
Purely for research.
Yes. So here's a little summary from IMDb. You would actually enjoy this. Listen to this.
Okay.
When the ruthless mutant crime lord Rancic escapes captivity and travels back in time to change the future,
Back in time. I love it.
right? 4 Time Force officers chase him from the year 3000 to present day. Needing a lookalike to help activate their chronomorphers, they receive some aid from their fallen friend's ancestor. As the new Time Force Power Rangers, the 5 must fight Rancic, his devious robotic second-in-command Frax, and their cronies to save the future from chaos and destruction.
That's pretty epic, y'all.
Yeah, it had all the things. It had time travel, it had romance, it had adventure and action.
Robot-sounding monsters.
All
we got
of
it all.
Yes. Kirk and I still joke about it. I mean, literally, it'd be like, when's that episode coming on? When's the next episode coming? It had some solid actors.
Yeah.
Edward Albert was in it. He played the father of one of the main characters
Are
from
you
the main
talking
Power
about
Rangers.
Eddie Albert or Edward?
His name is Edward Albert, and I found out that he is the son of Eddie
Well,
Albert
there you
from
go.
Green Acres.
There you go. I
Right?
loved Eddie Albert.
Yes. So it was very engaging, and it's interesting because as you rewatch it, I mean, I'm sure this is also a reflection of the time period, but you saw little elements. It was reminiscent of pieces of Terminator, or you saw some of that little Matrix where they would kind of like do the slow-mo bending type thing. Yes. So they were putting it all in there. So, of course, when we decided we were doing...
You were on it. You
I
said
was
Power
like,
Rangers
we
done.
need to do this. And I'm going to tell you, it was in my mind. And then what happened was Kirk and I went to visit Camden in St. Louis, and we all went out. They took us to this little, basically it's an arcade. It was like a rec bar. And what was playing on
Power
every
Rangers.
TV? Power Rangers. I was like, there it is. We are doing this. All right. So heading into this episode, episode. Of course, you've heard some of my backstory.
Yeah.
Do you have any background?
Absolutely none. I mean, I think my brother watched it, but I would have, if you're saying this was in the 90s to 2000s, I would have aged out of this and thought I was too cool for school, and not watched it.
Yeah.
So I have none. I'm going to
Okay.
be completely educated.
Okay. Well, I think you're going to enjoy it anyway. It is fun. It's a big franchise, to be honest. I'm going to be pretty much zooming in on the originators. I mean, we're
Sure.
going to talk a little bit more about, but basically I'm going to live in how it started and the original, which was the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Mighty Morphin.
Yes. So the summary is, it's a very short summary. A team of teenagers with attitude are recruited to save Angel Grove from the evil witch Rita Repulsa.
Rita Repulsa. I do remember her. She was like, ah!
She had that screaming voice.
Yes.
Yes. And later, Lord Zed, emperor of all he sees, and their horde of monsters. Here's how it all started. Back in 2018, when it was the 25th anniversary of the show's premiere, they had lots of, publicity, lots of things came out. One of those was an Entertainment Weekly article that contained an interview with several people who were part of that original cast and crew, including Haim Saban, the creator and producer of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So this is coming, I have several sources, but some of these quotes and details that I'm sharing with you are directly from the source. These are straight
Horse's
from
mouth right
yep,
here.
right there. Haim Saban was described in this LA Times article as an Israeli-American mogul and entrepreneur who by the mid-'80s had already been very successful working in the music industry internationally, and also then made his name in television after he moved to LA. So at the end of the 1980s, he founded Saban Entertainment, and that's where he started helping to create cartoons, some of which did make it into the Saturday morning lineup. So this guy's kind of got his hand in everything. Yeah. In the interview with Entertainment Weekly, he said he was visiting Tokyo in 1984, and while he was watching TV one day, he came across this popular Super Sentai franchise on their television. He said, quote, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to create an American version of Super Sentai. I'd never seen anything like it on TV in Europe or Israel or America. Action scenes are the most expensive to shoot, but you didn't see their faces in the battle scenes. So I thought you can use the Super Sentai footage from Japan.
Oh, yeah.
But it took 8 years of trying to convince different people.
See?
It's always that way.
It's always that way.
You
Jim
have an
Henson
idea,
just had
but
a thing like, I know it'll succeed. They're like, I don't think so.
But
And
it
then
also is a good
amazing.
lesson in perseverance,
It
right?
is.
Because how many of us would give up before 8 years passed?
True,
Or
very
in
true.
Jim Henson's case, it was several years as well. Yeah. Well, apparently, I did not find out a lot about the Super Sentai franchise, but based on what I've seen in these different sources, it sounds as though the Super Sentai show featured these fantastical giant monster fights, and Saban thought they would be very popular with kids in the US. But again, couldn't get people to go with his idea until after Saban Entertainment had its first hit with their 1992 X-Men. And then all of a sudden that opened some doors.
It does. You just hit one foot in the door and then it just busts wide open.
Yeah. So Margaret Lesh was the president of Fox Kids at the time. She listened to the idea and she took it to the president of Fox, who was not super pumped about it. But he said, you know what? Shoot a pilot. If it tests well, maybe we'll do it. So according to a 2019 interview with the Television Academy Foundation, Margaret Lesh said that the pilot did test very well with young boys and girls, and that actually spoke to her because she noticed that the girls at the screening all had their own favorite female character, and these female characters were very strong. In fact, she used the term they could kick butt, and she said that really helped her to realize she could have a hit. This was appealing to all the kids.
Everybody.
Yeah. So they went ahead and they moved forward in creating the pilot, which was cast under the name Phantoms. So everybody thought the show was going to be Phantoms, and then they actually went on, and at one point it was Dino Rangers, but then later they knew...
Dino Rangers would have been cool.
Well, there are dinosaurs in they use dino names in this. Nice. Yeah. So at some point they knew they wanted it to be something 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 Power Rangers. And then eventually they figured out it was going to be Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Once they finally had their official title, now they needed a theme song. So they turned to a man named Ron Wasserman. He was one of their in-house musicians working for the Saban company. And Ron Wasserman had an extensive background in music. This was a guy who had been in a band. He had experience composing and performing, all of it. The same LA Times article I referenced a minute ago said, quote, in an interview with the Village Voice in 2013, Wasserman said the only input he was given was a suggestion to use the word go in the theme song because it had been successful in the Inspector Gadget theme song.
Go, go, Gadget.
Wasserman then decided to do a rock theme, creating the show's iconic guitar riff and the memorable chorus, Go Go Power Rangers. The theme song was cranked out in 2.5 hours.
Stop it. It's amazing. We were jamming to it before the episode started.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then Ron also said that Haim Saban told him that Fox went crazy over it and that the recording with his vocals would be on the show because when he did it, he
thought it was just a demo.
Yeah, he thought they're going to replace me as the singer, and they were like, no, we're using you. He also joked that the name of the show was a little challenging. He had to make sure that he did not call it Morphine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually saw the one thing I did, my very cursory research in this, is I looked up on YouTube if I could see anything, and it was like scandals surrounding Power Rangers, and one of them was it was banned in a certain country because they thought it was too close to the word morphine.
Really?
Yes, it was.
Well, speaking of a little bit of a, I don't know, it's not a scandal, but a little bit of a controversy was Ron was something that he spoke about in different interviews was being very disappointed, I don't know if upset's the right word, but he was not given credit for being the one who created this song and sang it and performed it for a long time.
Who did they give the credit to?
Well, because again, he was working in-house for this company. It was kind of work for hire. And so like his name wasn't on it. In some cases, I can't remember if they listed other people or if he just wasn't listed. But now when I research, I do find his name very...
We give you credit, Ron. You're getting a cheers from us later.
That's right. Well, and you know what? Great thing that you're doing that because guess what, guys? I reached out to Mr. Ron Wasserman and I asked if he might send us a short audio clip, and he very kindly did so.
This is Ron Wasserman, the composer and singer of the song that you just might recognize, Go Go Power Rangers. Hope you're all having a great day.
And this is where we hope to play a clip of the song because you guys, I'm telling you, I mean, Ashley agreed. We just listened to it. We were both jamming out. This is a great song.
Yeah, it is.
And I ended up rewatching the first, I'm not even sure, it might have been the first 20 episodes of this original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series. And it hit me how powerful this song was. It would come on, not just like, you know, as you might expect in the beginning or the end of the show or something like that. It would come on every time there was an action sequence. And it
all
was
the time.
It was so important.
Yeah.
I mean, it really built the excitement.
Is it like when She-Ra and He-Man would transform and they'd always play their thing?
It would play every time you'd go into an action sequence. This song was hugely significant. And so this is where we were going to play a little bit of it. But again, because Ron was work for hire, legally he could not give us permission. So really quickly, here's the next best version.
What is it?
You and me.
Oh my gosh. Well, all you're going to get from me is
Go, go, Power Rangers.
That's it.
So the cast. A 2017 Time magazine article said that, I love this, the show still holds a special place in millennials' hearts thanks to its campy storyline. A group of teenagers are recruited to defend Earth against the evil sorceress Rita Repulsa, and dramatic visual effects, which were adapted stock footage from the Japanese series. Again, this actually has the Japanese name, which I cannot pronounce, but it's that same series, Super Sentai, that we referenced.
Why is it always got to be in the hands of teenagers? You know, we need the Earth to be saved by people like us. We're just ready to go. You know?
Are we? Do you
though?
really want to be tasked with saving the Earth?
Can I do it? Can I do it from my room in a computer? I could be the man in the chair. You know, in Spider-Man where he's got the man in the chair. I'll be the man in the chair.
Do we have to be fit and do gymnastics and battle monsters?
We'll send the teenagers out.
Okay, all right. And then the end of this says, there have been numerous spin-offs and costume alterations since that series ended in 1995, but to many, the original Power Rangers are still the real deal. And that's why I want to focus in on the original Power Rangers, because there have been been a ton of actors associated with this project. I mean, we would be here all day if we tried to like hit them all. We're not going to. We're going to go right to how it all started. And it's funny because there were actually a few changes even between the pilot and the start of the actual show. So I'm going to basically talk you through the cast that everyone remembers from the show, okay? And a little bit about the process they had to go through to win their roles. Again, remember, the executives wanted teenagers with attitude. That's how they introduced them in the opening episode. So they knew they needed actors who would be able to pull off the fight scenes. They needed them to be athletic, and they needed them to have a very specific skill set. So their audition process involved performing choreographed fight scenes.
Oh, well, I'm already out then. Okay.
Well, one of the actors, the one who ends up playing the Red Ranger, Austin St. John, he said in an interview that he was in this huge room full of, in his case, it was all males.
Yeah.
And he said, one of the executives says, raise your hand if you know any martial arts.
Wow.
And anybody who did not raise their hand, they said, see ya.
Wow.
I mean, they just walked out of the room. So,
well, I mean, that's really a favor to them because if you didn't know martial arts, there's no time to teach you that for this show.
Yeah. And they weren't going to consider you. So, right. So let's talk about Austin St. John. He was the original Red Ranger. His character name was Jason Lee Scott. And his dinozord, they had dinozords. Ashley, and his dinozord was the Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah, it was.
So a quick explanation of dinozords. The Megazord, like when they were fighting some...
Didn't they become one big massive
That's
thing?
what the Megazord was. So their separate 5 dinozords would come together to form this powerful humanoid robot, which would be strong enough to fight against the really supersized big monsters.
Like,
right?
They're like little Transformers, right?
I actually thought of the Transformers several times. I did. So Austin St. John, his real name was Jason Lawrence Geiger. So it's funny that he ended up actually, his real name is Jason, and he ended up playing a Jason. Oh. And he commented he thinks that's one of the only times that happened. But the original premise was that his role was to be the leader of the Power Rangers. The Red Ranger was going to be the leader. Now, something's going to happen during the middle of the season that changes that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But at his audition, Austin St. John explained that he did not go into it as an actor. He was a high school student at the time. Wow. He taught martial arts on the side. Wow. And one day, a man taking his class who happened to be a commercial acting coach said, hey, there's, some auditions going on for this show called Phantoms. You should audition. He said he told the guy he was not interested. And then this man said, I'll bet you $20 you could get this role. You should go. Austin said he was a young kid with a car and he needed $20 and he showed up.
Wow.
Austin had a big background in martial arts, taekwondo, judo, kenpo. He was very experienced. He was teaching it. He made it through several rounds. You had to go through several rounds, but he really felt that the way he performed in some of these very intense choreographed fight scenes is what helped him to win the role. Yeah. He was only 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
He really was a teenager.
He was the youngest one of the cast, although we have another one who was very close behind. Amy Jo Johnson played Kimberly Hart. She was the Pink Ranger, and her dinozord was the pterodactyl. Oh. She was only 22 when she starred as the original Pink Power Ranger. In real life, she was a very accomplished gymnast, and that was something that they obviously used not only in the fight scenes, but they also would sometimes feature that in other ways in the show. Her character, Kimberly, was supposed to be a popular, well-liked girl, occasionally described as being something of a valley girl. Because Amy Jo could sing in real life. Sometimes they would incorporate that as well. In fact, in real life, she's recorded 3 albums.
Cool.
And she's now also directing and doing other things. Walter Emmanuel Jones played Zach Taylor, the Black Ranger. His dinozord was the Mastodon. Walter had a background with both martial arts and gymnastics, and he said that in his first audition, he was asked to show some gymnastics moves. So he did a backflip, landed it, and then hit a karate stance, at which point he said they asked him to come back again the next day.
Yeah, they say, and we'll see you again, sir.
So an interesting thing was they had it in their mind that they also wanted the character of the Black Ranger to dance. So in order to win this role, you also had to prove that you could dance. And luckily, Walter was pretty great at that too. And that was something they would incorporate into into the show. Like it would
Like a dance off,
Yeah,
like in Guardians of the Galaxy.
well, it would be like a fight would be starting, and all of a sudden you'd see the Black Ranger would hit some of these moves. Here's a quote from him, Walter, about that in this Entertainment Weekly interview article that they did. In the beginning, I thought it was weird Zach would dance in battle. I was like, my friends are in danger. Why would I dance? It's like I don't care. But eventually I was able to transform it into something that was more about distraction.
Ah, yes.
So watching the hand, but the kick is coming.
That's it.
Yeah. So if I were to describe the character of Zach, I don't know if this is how other people would, but I would say his persona or his kind of identity was he was the friendly, fun-loving one, I think. Like Amy Jo Johnson, he was 22 when he started the show, 23 when it actually aired. David Yost played Billy Cranston, the Blue Ranger. His dinozord was the Triceratops, and Billy was the very stereotypical nerd character. He, including, like, they dressed him that way.
The glasses, too.
Yes, the whole thing. They went straight for the stereotype. His character was supposed to be good at technology and inventing
He's the man in the
things.
chair.
He was supposed to be very awkward as his everyday character, but when he morphed into the Blue Ranger, he was just as athletic as the other Rangers. He could fight just as well as anybody else. And in real life, David also had an impressive background in gymnastics. He shared this in an interview. I originally auditioned for the role of Victor, which was the original name for the Red Ranger. I made it through 3 auditions, but I could tell the producers were leaning in a different direction. I begged them to let me read for the role of Billy, and they told me no. They didn't think I fit the way Billy was supposed to be. But I went in the bathroom and wet my hair down and borrowed somebody's glasses and shirt and buttoned it crooked and came back and said, please let me read for Billy. He got the part.
Nice.
Yeah. He was the oldest. He was 23 during filming, 24 when it aired.
Oh, that's so old.
And then there was Thuy Trang. She played Trini Quan, the Yellow Ranger. Her dinozord was the saber-toothed tiger. Now, she was born in Vietnam, and her family had to leave the country due to the political situation. And she, in one interview, talked about having to come across on, as a refugee. And so she had this very interesting background, but her character would, I think, be described as very smart, beautiful, compassionate, a problem solver. It was a really strong, another female character that was very strong. She was not the first person cast in this role. A different actress, Audrey Dubois, was actually cast first. She played the Yellow Ranger in the pilot.
Okay.
And one of the co-stars said that the way the Trini character was played by the first actress was actually much more aggressive and tomboyish than the way this Trini is that we know now. But this first actress, Audrey, had to drop out after reportedly she asked for more pay and was told no. This is how Thuy was cast. She also had a martial arts background, coming into the show with experience in Kung Fu. An interesting fact is that Kimberly's costume, when she morphs, has a skirt to it, but Trini's does not. And the reason for that is in the Japanese footage that they use, the Yellow Ranger is actually male.
Oh.
So then her outfit had to match.
Yeah.
She was 19 when the show came out. And the last Power Ranger was Jason David Frank. He played Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger. His background, very, very accomplished in martial arts, trained in several different areas. He was not one of the original Rangers. He was only supposed to have a very short stint on the show, but it did not turn out the way it was expected. Here's what he said in an interview. They brought me in during the 17th episode of the first season. I was told when I was hired, don't get excited. You're here for 10 episodes. Your character dies off on the show. I said, hey, I'm happy to do 1 episode. When I first got to set, the first thing I did was lay out my costume on the chair and took pictures. Then I saw the mouth on the helmet didn't move. I was like, man, I probably don't even have lines in this episode. But I did, and I just did the best I could, and more opportunities just kept opening for me, and eventually Tommy became the leader.
Nice.
So when he did come on the show, he was supposed to be a short part. What ends up happening is the audience loved him.
Yeah, that's always what happens with
Yeah.
the short-term character. The audience just adores them.
And so there was real life tension between this actor and the actor who played the Red Ranger, because remember,
He was supposed to be
he
the
was
leader.
supposed to be the leader, and that they think that was part of that. Obviously, this Tommy character, played by Jason David Frank, would go on to be the longest running Ranger in the franchise.
Really?
Yeah, he kept coming back for lots of different things on the series, more so than any of the other actors. And he would ultimately end up wearing 4 different colors as a Power Ranger.
Oh, wow.
He was not a lot older than Austin St. John when he started. He was around 19, I believe, and then 20 1920 when it aired. His dinozord was actually called the Dragon Zord. We're almost finished. This is the last note I'll make about casting. They had these comedic characters, Bulk and Skull. Paul Schreier played Farkas Bulkmeyer, nicknamed Bulk, and Jason Narvey played Eugene Skulovich, nicknamed Skull, and they were the comic relief. So these two fellas were supposed to be basically bullies. And they started out as bullies. They kind of changed a bit as
Did they morph?
You might say they did. Yeah. According to the fella who played Skull, Jason Narvey, he said when Haim Sabin saw the characters of Skull and Bulk, he said, quote, "These guys are morons. I want them in every show." So, I mean, there was nothing subtle about this.
Yes.
Like you would have the goofy music would start playing. Every time they would start to bully or do something rude, one of them would end up tripping or falling or splitting their pants. Or I mean, it was
Three
just
Stooges.
Exactly. So now that we've met the cast, why don't we take a quick little break, and when we come back, we'll dig into the show itself. We love including listener voices in our episodes, and we're always looking for more. So tell us, where do you sip your scandal water? Do you catch up on the tea while folding your laundry, sitting at your work desk, working out at the gym? Let us know by sending in your shout out, telling us your first name, your hometown, and where you are or what you're doing when you listen to Scandal Water. And you just might hear a voice you recognize starting one of our upcoming episodes. Email your audio clip to scandalwaterpodcast@gmail.com. The voice memo app on your phone will work just fine. Cheers! And we are back. We've talked about the cast. We've talked about putting the pilot together and how actually there were a few changes made between the pilot and the start of the actual show. But they did start filming it once they had, official cast in place. And just to give you a tiny bit more of a detailed summary, here's a different one I found on IMDb. 4 athletically able teenagers, along with their brainy friend Billy, are selected by Zordon to fight the evil Rita Repulsa, her monsters, and her minions after the witch is accidentally released from imprisonment in an intergalactic dumpster on the moon.
Now, who did that? Who's the one that released her? Who's that guy? How do you do that?
I think it was, I can't remember. I don't remember how it actually played out. That's interesting. But action scenes and scenes with Rita were edited from footage based on Japanese action sagas. We've already talked about that. So this is a point, though, that I want to bring out. So these young actors that were cast, they jump right into filming what's supposed to be 40 episodes, but because of the
40? That's a
popularity would
lot.
later turn into 60.
Whoa.
60. Their shooting schedule was so intense that many of the Power Rangers had seen almost either none or just a little of the Japanese footage that was being used for their own action scenes. So in some ways, they were confused themselves about what they were doing or what it was even going to look like. And because of this intense schedule, Austin St. John said it was absolutely grueling. Here they are, these young kids. They would film Monday through Friday. He said it would be dark when they started, dark when they left. And then on Saturday, they would have to come in to do the voiceover work for when the other footage was being used.
Yeah.
And their voices would have to be kind of telling
Yeah.
the story. And he commented that, Austin did, that he would end up having to do his workouts on Sunday along with any other tasks that he had to do because that was his only time. The actors had actually recorded a huge number of episodes for season 1 before the first one even aired. So they're just cranking them out. They haven't aired yet. No idea how these are going to be received. August 28th of 1993 was the date of the first episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It was called Day of the Dumpster. And again, it premiered on Fox Kids. As one of my sources commented, it was the start of a phenomenon that would forever change pop culture. In that first episode...
That's a big statement.
Oh, yeah, it is. But there was a lot of setup. We met the evil Rita Repulsa and her minions. We also met Zordon, who's basically a leader and a mentor to the Power Rangers after he recruits them and in that opening episode. We also meet a fun robotic character, Alpha 5, who helps out in the command center. But from the first episode, that's when they started to establish some of the patterns that we would come to appreciate as viewers, or some of the little fun features, you might say, of the show. I'm going to list a few of those for you. One thing that's fun is their setting. They purposely put a lot of the action, a lot of the hangouts and the things occur in the Angel Grove Youth Center, which is a combination gym, juice bar, and basically general hangout spot for kids. So at different times, of course, course, we see the Power Rangers there leading martial arts classes or exercise classes. They might be participating in some type of community cultural event or sometimes just hanging out with each other and having juice. But that's a big place for them. The Power Ranger colors that they are assigned are always reflected in their everyday clothing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, which I'm assuming helps like the little kids keep them
Yeah,
straight,
yes.
right? It was. We heard him use the term campy. It was campy. There was slapstick action. I mean, you know, even we talked about it, the music that would cue that we're moving into the slapstick scene with Bulk and Skull. They would have punny jokes.
I do like a good punny joke.
Oh yeah, you know, like the have a nice trip, see you next fall. I mean,
Yeah.
it was all there. It really was. And the kids loved it. Oh, Morphinominal. Sometimes, yeah, I mean, if you look at it, goodness, sometimes you're just watching these are just people wearing spandex.
Yeah.
You know, their villains would look so, their costumes would look a little goofy.
But
not
you
very-
love what you
but
love, and it's
yes,
okay
yes.
to love it.
And in the early years, especially, they would have some pretty obvious lessons or morals they would try to emphasize in their episodes. In fact, they started doing this thing where they would even have little separate PSA messages that would be broadcast, you know, basically messages from the Power Rangers about be a good friend
Yeah.
or, you know, whatever.
Hey, kids, wash your hands.
Right. As we said, the actors were so busy cranking out episodes, they did not understand how the show was actually being received. So Walter Emmanuel Jones, who played the original Black Ranger, Zach Taylor, said that he started to realize that the show was doing okay when one day a child said something about his doll. And Walter said, I have a doll? And he said the kid looked at him and said, yeah, and your face is on the box.
Oh, he didn't even know that?
No, he had no idea.
wow.
I mean, they were so busy.
So busy
yes.
working.
Two different actors I've heard speak about this one incident that they say brought home to them just how popular the show was. It occurred in 1994 when the show had been out a few months, and David Yost talks about it several times. I've seen him speak about this at different Comic-Con events. Basically, what happened was the cast had been brought in. They were supposed to do this show at
At a
Universal.
Comic-Con?
No, David Yost is telling about it
Oh,
at
at Comic-Con.
Comic-Con
Gotcha,
events.
gotcha. Okay.
But what happened was in 1994, the cast had been brought together. They were supposed to do this show at Universal Studios. And they're thinking, okay, it's supposed to
few
be
people.
one show. I think, you know, maybe a few thousand people might come if we're lucky. It literally shut down
Stop.
the freeway.
Oh my goodness.
It shut down the freeway for something like 8 miles. They thought they were going to do one show. They ended up having to do multiple shows. I think they had to shut down the park. They had to, like, we are at capacity. We cannot
also
let
shows
anybody
you
else enter.
The lack of, I don't want to say lack of, but I don't know another word. The lack of social media. If they had Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, they would have known how big they
Right.
were. But back then, you would have been in your own little world and not had any clue.
Yeah. And David said they had to move their show to a larger theater
Wow.
that would seat maybe 6,000. And
What
again,
a nice surprise.
multiple shows. So it was crazy how popular they were. And this was them figuring it out basically for the first time.
In real time.
Yeah, Amy Jo Johnson said, I found it incredibly overwhelming. And then she tells about a different experience. She said, I remember going to Hawaii and getting off the plane to do an appearance there. They'd announced we were coming on the radio, and 10,000 people showed up at the airport, and they didn't have any security. It scared the heck out of me.
Oh, gosh.
So they were monstrously successful, and they're finding this out, these young kids. So here are a few statistics to demonstrate just how popular it was. Within 2 months, the show was reaching 4.3 million children, according to a Fox spokesperson back in 1993. By the end of season 1, the average was 4.8 million, followed by season 2, 6.9 million. When the Los Angeles Fox affiliate made the choice to air the show at 3 p.m., it would frequently have higher viewership than the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Whoa.
A different source said that within its first season, it became the highest rated kids show on broadcast television. And they, again, going back to what we talked about before, it appealed to more of the female demographic than Fox Kids normally reached. They said at the time, most of Fox Kids programming averaged around 20% of a female audience, but Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had a demographic of around 40% of a female audience.
That's good.
And that's when the exec said, you know what? We're going to do 60 episodes
Ugh.
instead of 40.
These these poor kids.
Yeah. Now, the show took criticism. I mean, we've talked about this several times across different episodes that violence in children's programming was a thing that people did not, this was something that was being looked at very carefully. And it's funny because as a parent who was letting my kid watch it, I don't think I was thinking about it back then the way I would think about it now. Yeah. But there it was full of martial arts and fight sequences with these
Did they
fake
show
monsters.
blood though?
No, and it was
I
all
think it's different.
very,
I think that's different.
it was very
Silly.
campy. Yeah, it was. And then again, they would have this moral message at the end, which one person was like, well, here's what she said actually. Carol Lieberman, she's a media psychiatrist and a clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA. She gave an interview back in 1993 in which she said, it's a harmful show for kids because of its highly violent content. But worse than that, it's schizophrenic because of the hypocrisy it demonstrates, presenting a half hour of violence and then trying to undo it in 30 seconds. Like that little moral message at the end. Yeah.
Well,
so
it was
some heated criticism.
That was 1993, and I hate to tell you, but you probably won't like Jurassic Park either. A lot of violence and a lot of moral messages were mixed together there.
Yeah. So it was not without its critics.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure I bring that out there. But here's the thing. There were other concerns that were expressed by the cast members themselves. And it became really evident how unhappy they were about this partway through season 2, because here's what happened. Season 2 started with 6 Power Rangers because by this time, Tommy is part of the show too, because remember, they loved him. Here's the summary from season 2. Tired of Rita Repulsa's failure to dominate the Earth, her boss, Lord Zed, steps in to take matters into his own hands. Determined to rid the universe of the Power Rangers once and for all, Zed has at his disposal an entire arsenal of monsters created with his own personal touch and inspired by earthly plants and animals. To battle this new villain, who is twice the evil tyrant Rita was, the Power Rangers are imbued with new and greater powers, along with new Zords modeled after mythological creatures, the Thunder Zords. What happened was, Rita also ended up returning before the season was over. I did not see a definitive explanation for this, but several sources made comments about the fact that the character they brought in, Lord Zed, was a bit too terrifying for the little kids, so they think that Rita was brought back because it
she
kind
was
of
fun.
toned down that scary vibe. She was a little over the top, which made her a little comical, you know? But halfway through the show's second season, the 27th episode to be exact, the Yellow Ranger, the Black Ranger, and the Red Ranger, those actors all left the series. So, and it supposedly happened because the Power Rangers, these actors, when they came in, it was non-union pay. Here's the series making wildly popular, merch, all of it, and it's doing so well. And reportedly, they asked for more pay and were told no.
Well, that's
and
what happened to the first Yellow Ranger, right? The lady who did the pilot.
Right, yeah.
Oof.
So they left. And
Did they leave or were they let go?
well, it sounded as though they left.
Okay.
They might have tried to leverage and then they were let
Maybe.
leave. Yeah. Walter Jones went on to a new show on Nickelodeon, and about comparing those two, he said the new one was union. The pay was substantially different. The hours we could work were substantially different. Our breaks were scheduled. It was completely different.
Yeah.
So
they're working them to death.
They
it sounds
were,
like.
and they had no recourse. So, by the way, it took many more years, but ultimately the Power Rangers did become union affiliated.
That's good.
Yeah, the episode where they made the switch was entitled Power Transfer Part 1. It aired in November of 1994, and the storyline had the characters of Trini, Zach, and Jason going off to a peace summit in Switzerland. So the new Rangers were brought in to replace them, and they transferred their powers over to Karen Ashley, was the actress who took over as the Yellow Ranger. Johnny Young Bosch took over as the new Black Ranger, and Steve Cardenas took over as the new Red Ranger, although by that point, Tommy's the leader. So the Red Ranger is no longer the leader.
Okay.
They had a movie that came out in 1995, and it was after that when Amy Jo Johnson requested her character be written off the show during season 3 so she could pursue other acting opportunities. She was the original Pink Ranger. So midway through that season, they had a multi-episode arc that focused on Kimberly, the character, passing the torch over to Catherine Hillard, who was played by Catherine Sutherland. Our original Blue Ranger, David Yost, Billy, he left at the end of season 4. He later revealed he suffered some harassment from the crew crew because he was gay, and that's what made him finally decide to leave the show. And then our final actor, Power Ranger actor, I should say, Jason David Frank, who played Tommy Oliver, he left the show after season 5. Now, he came back many times and acted in several other series and even made a cameo with Amy Jo Johnson in the 2017 movie. Some of the others came back for different things as well. But Jason David Frank officially left the show in the last one after season 5. Bulk and Skull, the two comedic characters, they outlasted all the Rangers. They were there from 1993 and went out at some point during season 7.
How many seasons were there?
Oh, goodness. They're still going.
Oh, really? Oh,
I mean,
okay.
different things are still happening. I mean, they're kind of hit and miss, but yeah, it's over 30.
Wow.
Yeah. So a sad note is that Thuy Trang, the original Yellow Ranger, died after a car accident in 2001 at the age of 27.
Oh.
Yeah. As time went along, the different series that were developed, they did not always follow the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger storyline. In fact, oftentimes the new series would be a standalone plot. That's how it was with Time Force, the one I started with. Again, over 30 different series now. A few of them have been Power Rangers in Space, Power Rangers Wild Force, Power Rangers Ninja Storm, Power Rangers Samurai. It goes on and on and on. There have been 3 theatrical movies, the last of which was released last year in honor of the Power Rangers 30th anniversary. I watched it.
Did you? Was it good?
I mean, for nostalgia's sake,
yeah.
It was. And they brought back some of the old characters in it, some of the original actors, which I loved. A trivia note, Bryan Cranston voiced the villain Snizzard, part snake and part lizard-like monster, and also another character named Twinman, and he also showed up in some different episodes. So, Bryan Cranston, you know, we know him. Over the years, as I've already said, most of the original actors did pop back sometimes to do, you know, a cameo. Sometimes they'd work on a movie, or sometimes they'd even jump in for a whole season. But for the most part,
Once they left, they left.
once they left, they left. So the interesting thing is these actors who were the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers have been given credit for being some of the first to realize the power of their show and how much fans appreciate it, and then to take advantage of that through Comic-Cons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The LA Times article that I've mentioned before said Walter Jones, Austin St. John, and Thuy Trang, who played Trini, now we said she passed in 2001, but prior to that, they were the first to figure out how much fans loved them and appreciated getting to interact with them in person at car shows, is how they first figured it out. So Walter, I think, then started booking appearances at conventions and fan events, and he said that the inaugural Power Morphicon, which is a biannual Power Rangers convention that started back in 2007, was when he first realized the long-term effect of the franchise on its audience, and so it's made him very positive about his experience, and he started doing more conventions. He told his friends Jason David Frank that this is a great gig. He told David Yost. They started doing more of it, and the actor who played Skull said this about Jason David Frank, who played Tommy. He understood that Comic-Cons were a form of entertainment. He understood that it wasn't about celebrating something that happened, but continuing to make something happen. Being at the Comic-Con was about being at the Comic-Con, making it an event. He embraced that he was there as an entertainer, not a celebrity, and he did not let his fans down. So Jason David Frank kind of became the one that most people recognize as the one who was really, he was a star. He's the one who knew how to do it the best, right? They continue to do these. I have watched, just this morning as a matter of fact, I looked up and found a Comic-Con that happened in Scotland.
Really?
This year, where Amy Jo Johnson and David Yost were speaking together in front of, you know, a little crowd, and then they did Q&A at the end. So this is something that continues to this day, and people show up for it. Endurance and impacts. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2023 with that special we've already mentioned, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always. That was the movie that came out in honor of it. David Yost and Walter Jones were the two who did come back to reprise their roles as Billy Cranston and Zach Taylor, the original Blue and Black Rangers. They also brought back some of the actors who were in the second generation. 4 or 5 of those came back as well. And they had some cameos from the original English voice actor who did Rita Repulsa and the voice of Alpha 9. So in terms of impact, again, there's been some criticism. There are some elements of the show that have not aged well. That's acknowledged. The violence that some people have brought out, they might have done some racial stereotyping. There are elements that are not so great.
Yeah.
But the show is also beloved. It has been praised for many things. One thing that people comment about is the show's emphasis on teamwork and friendship. It's also been brought out that it shows strong female characters. In this show, the female rangers are just as capable and just as strong and powerful as the male teammates, which was not the case for a lot of the children's programming, especially back when this came out. They said that in some ways, this show advanced technology. One source said, quote, "The way Power Rangers incorporated film from two different sources to create a single cohesive narrative helped destigmatize sampling and normalized a practice that is now commonplace in mashup culture." And the show, which again, a long time ago, it came out 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, it has been credited for helping children appreciate different communities.
Oh, that's good.
Jason Narvey, again, he played Skull. He said in an interview, Power Rangers was showing how much cultures have in common. And more importantly, a culture over there is not a foreign culture. It's just a culture you haven't experienced.
I like that quote.
Yeah.
Armchair psychologist.
For our armchair, I thought I would do something a little different. Instead of just having us reflect on the show, since I know that you don't know a lot about it, this is not one that you grew up with.
Right.
I thought I would just throw something different at you and get your reaction.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the Power Rangers curse?
That's the video that I watched.
What? Okay, tell me.
That people passed away that were related to it. Is that what you're talking about, or is there something different?
Well, yes. Yeah. So you watched, a
YouTube video
Okay.
where it just talked about the curse of the Power Rangers, of some of the actors, and I don't remember, it was several days ago. Some of the actors who had played Rangers had, like the lady who passed in a car accident, and there were some other people who passed away too.
Yeah.
So tell me more about it.
Okay. Well, it is very sad. I mean, it really is. 2 of the original 6 Power Rangers are now gone. You just said that. One of them we've already talked about. Tui Trang died in that car accident in 2001. She was only 27. But what I have not yet mentioned is that Jason David Frank, who played Tommy, also has passed. He died of suicide in 2022. After his passing, his wife Tammy shared that he'd been struggling with mental health issues and some personal problems, like the loss of a daughter the year before.
Oh, yeah.
And then they took in actually that daughter's child to raise, and just all of this she felt contributed to them having marital problems that led to this temporary separation. So he just had so many things happening in his personal life. But at the time that he passed, Tammy said they were at a hotel, like they were in a hotel because they had decided to work on reconciling. They'd gone away for a weekend. They were going to spend some time together. She said they'd gone country line dancing that night. They'd had some drinks, and then she called it this really powerful, productive, emotional talk that they'd had in the room. She left to go get some snacks, and she said she returned to find that
awful.
Yeah, that he'd hung himself in
That's
the
awful.
bathroom. He was only 49. So tragic. And at the end of that movie I've mentioned, the Netflix special that was created in honor of its 30th anniversary, it was called Once and Always. There is a tribute within the credits dedicating the movie to Twee and to Jason David Frank. Yeah. A couple of the other negative events that people will bring up when talking about this supposed curse. In May 2022, there were 18 people, including Austin St. John, the original Red Ranger, who were arrested or summoned on charges for defrauding the government to receive COVID-19 business relief loans. Now, I kept looking for updates, to try to find out where the legal case is. I saw that he pled not guilty, and that's pretty much all I could find, other than I saw on social media that he has convention appearances coming up. So he's
not in trouble yet.
Right. He's out. He's going on with life, and he's still doing conventions. Must be doing okay in that perspective. Skylar DeLeon was a child actor, and
is he the little 12-year-old they added for? There was a little 12-year-old that I saw that they added.
It probably is him, because he was a child actor who did a lot of different things, but they say that his most prominent prominent role as a child actor was when he was an extra back in one of these original Power Rangers
No, he wasn't an
shows.
extra. They made this little kid an actual Power Ranger.
Oh, okay.
Because they said he was the youngest one and it was a weird little storyline. So.
Oh no, I don't think I'm familiar with that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this man, he had a non-speaking role, and this was long in his past. But as an adult, in 2008, he was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder for
Ooh.
killing a couple. The ruse was that he was test driving the yacht that he was supposed to be buying from them, and
Ugh.
yeah, somebody helped him with this, but he, yes,
That's
murder,
awful.
yes.
That's awful.
And then the last example I found, Ricardo Medina Jr. is famous as one of the Power Rangers in Power Rangers Wild Force and Power Rangers Samurai. And in January 2015, he stabbed his roommate to death with a sword following an argument.
Ew.
He was initially charged with first-degree murder, but pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter in 2017, sentenced to 6 years in prison, and was released in November of 2020 after serving 3 years. So, what are your thoughts about a Power Rangers curse?
I don't know if it's a curse so much of it is just, and I'm all about that kind of stuff. But it just, I don't know. It feels like just it's a lot of different people
I
and
know.
different, it happened.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't. I'd be all about like, yeah, but I don't see it.
I agree with you.
I think it's too big of a cast. You're going to have that in a multitude of people statistically.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, if you think about I'm sure it's thousands of people who have been involved with these over 30 different series. And,
Over 30 years.
Yeah. I mean,
And you pull out 10 people. It sounds like you're doing pretty good, actually.
I mean, it's sad though. I think the instances, the different incidents that you read about are just all so tragic.
Yeah, and it could have had something to do with the mental strain of all those hours and the grueling work that they were having to do. Maybe it made them a little tense, but I don't know. You can't blame anything on anything. I don't know. I don't know if they were...
And I go back to what you said. Statistically, you would expect
Yeah.
maybe this to happen. And
Yeah.
also, I think in almost every case, it's decades
Yeah.
after they were in the show.
I don't feel like that's the case.
Yeah,
I
I
feel
don't
like
think
if they
there's a
were
connection.
if it was something where in the season and they got cast and then this thing happened and went off the rails, then you could kind of lean into it, but this doesn't feel like it. This feels like grasping.
I agree. I mean, I think it's just kind of sensational, something interesting for people to talk about, but
Keep
I
'em
don't
in the
see
news.
any connection at all. But I will tell you, I just thought it was so sad how Twee
Yeah.
and Jason David Frank passed. It's just heartbreaking.
It is. It always is.
Yeah. Well, that's not a very happy note to end. But
Well, okay. Let's do. Since this is a little bit more, I'm gonna throw a question at you. Ooh. Let's end on something happy. Tell me a happy memory that is related to the Power Rangers and your family, and we'll end on that.
Well, I probably have already referenced them, but some of what comes back to mind is my adorable tiny little children wearing these Power Rangers outfits. And I mean, walking around doing these little kicks. Now, Camden knows martial arts. Did you know he has
I
a
did
black
not.
belt in Taekwondo?
I did not.
This is, I'm sure, one of the things that
inspired
that
him?
helped to inspire that. And that would actually be probably another thing that I would say then. You know what? That's an answer. Camden needed a little discipline. He was a rambunctious little fella, and martial arts was great for him.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting because that whole argument about the violence, martial arts taught him self-control, and when he never used it. I mean, he never in his life used it in a real life situation.
Yeah.
And that was something that they were so good about teaching you was responsibility.
Yeah.
And when would it be appropriate to use martial arts? When would it not? He learned to stand still and to be at attention and to, to go through all these moves. And so, yes, I picture my little kiddos watching Power Rangers and doing their little kicks, but then it also takes me to his whole career in martial arts and how that really helped him develop into a really great young man of character. So
There you go. That's a good memory to end on.
all right. Well, I think that brings us to our cheers. And I think we need to be sure to give a huge shout out to Mr. Ron Wasserman.
I promised him we would.
So, a cheers to you, Ron. You were an instrumental part
Yes,
of
he
that
was.
show, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
That's one of the only things I know about the show is that theme song. So yeah.
Yeah. And also all of the original cast and crew from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It was called a cultural phenomenon. So
And it affected your family.
it did. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
If you love what we do, please rate and review our show. Or you can become a supporter by making a donation through buymeacoffee.com/scandalwaterpod. Whether a single gift or a recurring monthly donation, it would go a long way towards supporting our work and allowing us to keep the tea brewing.
At our website, www.scandalwaterpodcast.com, you can submit questions or your own story ideas, access our sources and show notes, see the merch we offer for sale, and more. You can join the Scandal Water community through our Scandal Water Podcast Facebook page or follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Scandal Water Podcast.
This episode was executive produced by Candy Thomas, that's me, and Ashley Raymer Brown.
That's me.
It was researched and written by Candy Thomas and edited by Ashley Raymer Brown.
A special thank you to Josh Martin, who wrote, composed, and performed the Scandal Water theme and other music. Matt C. Adams, who created the artwork, and Joshua Reith, who designed our website and provides ongoing technical support.
As a reminder, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. The thoughts and opinions of the hosts during each episode of Scandal Water are their own and do not reflect the opinions of any future guests, advertisers, or clearly professional psychologists. Thanks for listening.